In the book of Genesis, we encounter the intriguing narrative of Abraham, a pivotal figure in the Hebrew Bible. After the death of his beloved wife Sarah, Abraham took another wife named Keturah. Genesis 25:1. This union came later in Abraham's life. It is a fascinating chapter that doesn't often get the same level of attention as other parts of his story. Keturah bore him 6 children: Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shuah. Genesis 25:2. However, the Bible provides limited details about this woman who shared the twilight years of Abraham's life. The extent and nature of Keturah's relationship with Abraham have sparked considerable debate among scholars and theologians. Was Keturah truly his wife, or was she merely a concubine, as some interpretations suggest, such as in 1 Chronicles 1:32? In biblical tradition, the status of a concubine, while often providing companionship and producing heirs, was not on par with that of a wife. A concubine had a continuous and exclusive relationship with the man, yet she held a lesser social and legal status compared to a wife. Keturah's position appears notably more humble compared to Sarah, Abraham's first wife, who is exalted in the Bible as a paragon of virtue, faith, and matriarchal authority. 1 Peter 3:6. Sarah is a central figure in the biblical narrative, often highlighted as a model of faithfulness and devotion. In contrast, Keturah, despite being a mother to 6 of Abraham's children, does not receive the same level of honor or detailed narrative focus. This contrast raises important questions about the role and recognition of women in biblical texts and the societal norms of those times. While Sarah is celebrated and frequently mentioned, Keturah is somewhat overshadowed, possibly reflecting her more modest status in Abraham's household. Nevertheless, Keturah's role should not be underestimated. She played a crucial part in God's broader plan by being the progenitor of 6 sons, who themselves became the ancestors of various tribes. Among these were the Midianites, a group that would later have significant interactions with the Israelites. The Midianites, for instance, were connected with Moses' story. It was in the land of Midian that Moses sought refuge and found a new beginning. Exodus 2:15. Speculations about Keturah's origins and identity have fueled discussions among scholars for centuries. One intriguing theory posits that Keturah might actually be Hagar, the Egyptian servant who bore Abraham's son Ishmael. This idea suggests that after being sent away, Hagar might have returned under a different name. However, there is no definitive evidence in the scriptures to confirm this theory. The biblical texts do not explicitly link Hagar and Keturah, and the distinct lineages and stories associated with each woman tend to support their separate identity. This hypothesis, while fascinating, remains speculative and highlights the complexities of interpreting ancient texts. Another line of thought considers the possibility that Keturah came from regions like Canaan or even more distant lands such as Ethiopia. Some interpretations of her name, which means incense or perfume in Hebrew, suggest a connection to the spice trade, which was prominent in these areas. This detail could imply that Keturah hailed from regions known for producing and trading spices, like Arabia or even Yemen. Such a background would add an interesting layer to the narrative, indicating that Abraham's family connections were diverse and far-reaching. Furthermore, some early Christian writers, such as Augustine, speculated that Keturah could have originated from lands even further afield, possibly in Africa. This view, while largely conjectural, suggests a broader, more inclusive scope to the Abrahamic family lineage, hinting at a universal dimension to the promises made to Abraham. Regardless of Keturah's precise origins or her status as wife or concubine, her story is a poignant reminder that in God's grand design, everyone has a unique and significant role. The Apostle Paul, in his teachings, often emphasized that God chooses what is low and despised in the world to accomplish his purposes. 1 Corinthians 1:27-28. This principle is vividly illustrated in the story of Keturah and her descendants. Despite her seemingly lesser status compared to Sarah, Keturah's children became important figures in their own right, with their own unique contributions to the unfolding biblical narrative. Her life story challenges us to recognize the inherent worth and potential of every individual, regardless of their background or status. In this sense, Keturah's narrative is not just a historical account, but a theological statement about the inclusive nature of God's promises and the unexpected ways in which his plans unfold. Ultimately, Keturah's story invites us to look beyond surface appearances and to appreciate the deeper, often hidden workings of God's plan. While the Bible may not provide exhaustive details about her life, Keturah stands as an example of how divine grace can operate through ordinary, seemingly overlooked people. Her inclusion in the genealogy of Abraham is a testament to the wide-reaching scope of God's covenant promises, which extend beyond the immediate family line to embrace a broader community. This broader understanding reminds us that in the biblical worldview, God's covenant with Abraham was never intended to be exclusive, but rather a blessing for all nations. Thus, the children of Keturah, like those of Sarah and Hagar, are part of this expansive vision. The narrative of Keturah challenges us to reflect on our own lives and the roles we play in the grand tapestry of history. It teaches us to value the contributions of those who might not always be in the spotlight, who nonetheless play crucial roles in the unfolding of God's plan. In recognizing Keturah's part in the story, we are reminded that every individual, regardless of their perceived importance, has a place in the divine narrative. This perspective encourages us to embrace our own unique roles and to trust that, no matter how humble our circumstances, we can contribute meaningfully to God's purposes. In conclusion, the story of Keturah, though brief and somewhat obscure in the biblical text, offers rich insights into the themes of divine inclusion, the universality of God's promises, and the value of each person's contribution to his plan. It challenges us to see beyond the immediate and obvious, to appreciate the broader, more inclusive scope of God's work in the world. As we delve into the lives of biblical figures like Keturah, we are invited to explore the depths of these ancient stories and to find in them reflections of our own journeys and calling. Let us continue to seek wisdom and understanding in the Scriptures, approaching them with humility and open hearts, trusting that God reveals His plan to each of us in His perfect timing.